Hello everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. At the start of every new year, we like to take some time to sit down with our ag economists for a more in-depth discussion on some of the things we've seen during the past 12 months, as well as take a look ahead at some of the trends we'll likely see in the new year ahead. Joining us now are Jody Campiche, our Ag Policy Specialist, Derrell, our Livestock Marketing Specialist, and Kim Anderson, our Crop Marketing Specialist. And what a year 2014 was. We had a new farm bill. We had lots of ups and downs in the grain market, as well as those sideways patterns that you mentioned. And of course, record beef prices. Derrell, on that note, let's start with you and recap 2014. Give us a picture.
Well, the word record is obviously the operative one. We started the year basically with record prices coming out of 2013 and proceeded at all levels of the cattle and beef industry to set new record levels pretty much throughout the year, ending the year essentially at record levels for feeder cattle, for fed cattle, for beef. So it's been a phenomenal year of transition to those higher prices, certainly faster than most people expected. The situation that's been building for a number of years really came home to roost in 2014. The net effect of several years of liquidation of the cattle herd, most recently because of the drought in the last 3 to 4 years, has created this supply situation that is the primary driver in this market. The pressure was there. One of the questions going into 2014 was beef demand, how it would respond to these tight supplies and the pressure to push prices higher. And for the most part, it was a pleasant surprise that we've seen, wholesale and retail prices follow through for the most part to support the kind of pressure that tight animal numbers is providing in the marketplace.
And then for producers, obviously, it was a banner year.
You know, at the cow-calf level, the focus is really oriented to the cow-calf level. They're the source of supply for the industry, and we don't have enough supply right now. And so cow-calf producers saw a $400 to $500 or more increase in revenues from the standpoint of calf prices. For the most part, cost of production actually went down a bit in 2014. Feed prices moderated for a good many producers. So it was a tremendous and unprecedented jump in net returns to that cow-calf producer.
Jody, let's switch gears to Washington. Set the stage there and what it took in terms of getting us a farm bill at last. It was quite a process.
Yes, this year was, really a big one for the farm bill. And of course, it took us almost 3 years of debate to actually get to the new farm bill. In February, it actually passed, and there was a really difficult political environment to actually get us a farm bill this year. And we're still, into implementation and lots of new changes with livestock programs, commodity programs, dairy programs. And, we still have a long way to go, actually, with getting this farm bill in place.
Why do you think it was so difficult to get there? I mean, everybody has their opinion, but now that we can look back to February, what do you think was the pivotal moment that finally got us the farm bill and then some of the difficulties getting there?
Some of the difficulties is, as the years pass, more and more people get involved in the farm bill debate, and there's a lot of outside interests that maybe aren't just agricultural interests. About 80% of the farm bill is actually food and nutrition programs, and, in an unprecedented event, they actually went and separated the farm bill programs, farm policy programs from the nutrition programs. They ended up putting it back together there at the end, but it was, just a really tough challenge to get to this point. And starting in February, once we finally got one in place, it was just, it was not an easy thing to do.
And then there's a farm bill in place, but then it takes a while to interpret it. Is that accurate to say?
Of course, that's a very accurate statement. Once the farm bill is in place, then we start going through interpretation of the rules and regulations, implementation, and just, even though language is written into the farm bill, that's not always the way that the the programs are actually implemented. So particularly with Farm Service Agency programs, once the Farm Bill came out, then it took months and months and months of reading through the rules, deciding which way the programs would be implemented. Now we're just into implementation of some programs. Some have been implemented, but we're still not even there yet on a full implementation of the programs.
And different than previous farm bills, this one is?
This is definitely different than previous farm bills. Of course, each farm bill that passes, it gets a little bit more difficult to get it through, and this last one proved to be probably the most difficult. So many are kind of wondering, once we get to the next farm bill, what's going to happen and whether we're still going to have a farm policy and nutrition policy combined into a farm bill.
And of course, those crop programs and crop prices, a big part of farm bill decision making. Kim, why don't you give us a recap of some of the things that made news in your area in 2014?
Well, let's start with the dollar index. Wallered around 80, 81 points till we got into July time period, and then we started seeing the value of the dollar relative to the other currencies increasing, and it increased from about 80 to almost 90 points. That was about 11% increase in the value of the dollar. And what that did is, you take wheat, it raised the price of wheat on the world market about 80 cents per bushel. And of course that had a significant impact. If you look at the grains, all of the grain prices came down. You look at corn, and on the Chicago Board of Trade nearby contracts, they peaked out at about $5.20 in June. They were down to $3.20 as we got into October, and then they've rallied about 25 cents since then. So we've seen corn prices coming down. That's good for Derrell's cattle prices and hog prices, makes those more profitable. You look at the soybeans, again we peaked out around around $15 in June time period. We got down to $9, a 42% decline in soybean prices, again helping Derrell's meal prices and feed prices there, and we've gained about 17%. Now, most Oklahoma farmers can identify with hard red winter wheat. We have to go back to May for that peak on that, around $8.50 on the KC contract. We declined down to $5.30. On the cash price on wheat, it's from about $6.90 down to $6.10 now. It was down to $5.40. And canola, we've been rotating that with wheat. Again, we had prices going down. You can look at the cash prices on the canola, because the Canadian dollar down, that took about 67 cents off our price. The value of the dollar took over $1 off our price. And so you look at canola prices, they dropped from around a little over $9 to just below $7.
A tough year in terms of prices and also in terms of the crop. We can't not mention that in terms of canola and wheat in Oklahoma.
Right. The good news was on each of these crops, you had a relatively good price at harvest. It was the producers that pulled the trigger at harvest. They did relatively well. The prices have been falling off ever since. We are getting a little rally back into them, but not much. We are definitely at the low end and walling around down here.
Okay, a good recap of 2014. We'll have more from our roundtable shortly, but first, here's Glenn Selk and Cow-Calf Corner.
We've mentioned before on the Cow-Calf Corner that body condition at the time of calving is very, very critical in terms of reproductive rates of beef cows. It's most important in the case of those first calf heifers. And so if you're raising some bred heifers this winter to calve this spring, I think we really want to emphasize to you that you need those heifers to be in a body condition score of at least a 5 and maybe a 6 at calving time. You see, research was done here at Oklahoma State University a number of years ago that looked at what happened with first calf heifers if we had some of them that were, in my opinion, too thin. They were less than a body condition score 5, most of them in the 4 category, as compared to counterparts that were 5 and above. So they had those two groups that they were looking at. Each one of those two groups were divided into half, and half of those groups were fed a very good ration to where they would actually gain weight, gain body condition after they calved and during early lactation. So you can imagine that was really a very, very sound, high energy diet. As we look at what happened with those groups of young heifers, you can see on this particular graphic that as those heifers that were in good body condition at calving time, 5 and above, whether they maintained that body condition for 8 weeks after calving, or whether they got additional feed to even gain more body condition after calving, those heifers had a very good rebreeding rate. Those that maintained their body condition, about 91% of them rebred, 94% of those that even got the higher diet. But now look at those heifers that were in thin body condition at calving time, those that were less than a 4. The heifers that maintained that thin body condition, didn't get a chance to regain any of it, rebred very poorly at only about 36%. Those heifers that were thin, but yet given a very good diet for the first 8 weeks after calving, those heifers gained a lot of body condition, even better body condition in 8 weeks than some of those that we had in that first group. But their rebreeding rate was much poor. Only 67% of those rebred. So I think the take-home lesson is pretty clear that those 2-year-old heifers need to be in a good body condition at calving time, because we can't feed enough in order to make up the difference in a short period of time to get a high percentage of them rebred. So let's plan to keep the supplement program, the hay program, available for those 2-year-olds so that they're in good body condition at calving time this spring, and we'll have a lot better rebreeding percentage as we check them again next fall. Hey, we look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
As we continue our roundtable talk this morning, let's take a look at where we ended up at the close of 2014. And Jody, I think it's safe to say that you spent the second half of 2014 sorting out Farm Bill details.
Yeah, that's absolutely a good thing to say. So once the Farm Bill was passed in February, the first part of the Farm Bill that was actually passed, the first program, was related to the livestock disaster assistance programs. And for 2014, what we actually did is go back and cover losses for the end of 2011, 2012, 2013, and once producers started going into sign up, they were actually getting covered for losses into 14 as well. So a lot of payments went out under that program. Oklahoma was one of the top states in receiving livestock disaster assistance payments due to the drought. Once we moved along to the commodity programs, we have some of those programs are starting to get implemented, but we're still, into the new year, and most of the commodity programs, the new average crop revenue election and the price loss coverage program, they're still not officially implemented yet. Producers just now could start going in and signing up for those programs, but the deadlines to actually go in and sign up will be early into this year in February and March. So, producers right now are just trying to figure out what the programs are, what they mean, which one they should get into, and so there's just been a lot of interpretation and trying to help them understand, what would happen if they get in either program.
And Jody mentioned the Livestock Disaster Assistance Program. How did that play into what's on the minds of producers and then kind of where we are at the end of 2014?
Well, we mentioned earlier that there was a big increase in net returns to cow-calf producers. Many of those producers also received some of the money from this livestock disaster program, and so there's a lot of cash out there right now. Producers are trying to make decisions, I think, about sort of where they go from here. As we end up the year 2014, beef production is down upwards of 6%. That's a big year-over-year decrease, the smallest total beef production since about 1994. Cattle slaughter behind that is down over 7%. Carcass weights are up, and that offsets part of it, but big decrease in that. We're going to continue to see tightness in those cattle numbers, and producers right now, if they're not recovering from the drought or weren't as affected by the drought, are still trying to figure out whether expansion is in the cards for them. Obviously, many producers in Oklahoma and the surrounding region are still recovering from drought liquidation, and so they're trying to make decisions about about rebuilding the herd, heifer retention, and/or buying cows, how to go about that. Obviously, prices again are at record levels, and producers, they have a lot of cash right now, and so they're trying to make decisions on how to utilize that.
It's kind of tough, though. I mean, it's a catch-22 because there's record prices, but do you reinvest? Do you make that gamble?
That's right. Well, and it's a short run and a longer run consideration. Really, for producers, I think the most important thing is sort of sorting out your expectations. As we've gotten into the record prices here at the end of the year, for me, a lot of the questions have come up, even though we've been talking about this really for several years, that something like this was coming. Nobody could call it exactly in terms of how fast we got to these price levels, but producers now naturally and understandably get very nervous about these record high price levels, how long they're going to last, and how they should position themselves in this market.
Kim, how did the year wind down in your subject area?
Slightly higher than they were, on the bottomed out prices as we talked about. I think the number one factor at the end of 2014 was the funds, the flow of money from one commodity or one class of commodity to another. And the flow of those funds is probably going to impact the wheat prices until we get into the February-March time period, where we get into a weather market. On corn and beans, it'll probably impact them until we get into the summertime period, late spring, early summer, when you get those soybean acres, corn acres decisions. I think with canola, the current canola price is below the cost of production. That price will probably have to come up. We've seen that the value of the dollar probably stabilize. It looks like it may be creating a sideways pattern, that wallering around up around 80 or 90 points, something like that. So that could stabilize that price change due to the dollar as we go into next year. It's a year of extremely high near record ending stocks for corn, around 2 billion bushels, up from about 1.2 this last year. Soybean ending stocks that went from less than 100 million bushels to over 200 million bushels. You've got wheat stocks that are tight, but they're trumped by the record or near record world ending stocks. And so you've got in all the commodities high stocks, not for hard red winter wheat or not for wheat within the United States, but in the world. So that's going to keep prices beat down, or at least right now for the next few months or so.
A lot for folks to sort out. As our viewers are winding down the year and thinking ahead to the new year, what kind of advice do each of you have for them? Let's start with you, Derrell.
Well, again, we've had record prices. Producers, I think, are faced with making decisions on how to take advantage of this market. And again, it comes down to expectations. It looks like because we're so much tighter on inventories than we ever intended to be, obviously the last few years, Mother Nature has dictated what we had to do as opposed to what we would like to do in terms of herd size and all of that. And so producers, really need to figure out what their strategy is for taking advantage of high prices for, I believe, an extended period of time.
And Jody, they need to do their homework on the Farm Bill, right?
Yeah, definitely on deciding between the programs and which ones they want to sign up. And of course, once they enroll, they're in it for the life of the Farm Bill. So, there's a lot of decisions, and price expectations are key, because deciding which program to enroll in comes down to what you think the prices are going to be. One thing to keep in mind is that, of course, unless the prices drop tremendously for several of the crops, that there's not going to be large payments from these FSA farm commodity programs. The bulk of the safety net will still come from crop insurance. So, making a choice is important, but keep in mind that, it's not to expect large payments unless the prices are really low.
And Kim?
Looking at corn and beans, they should already be sold. Wheat, if it's in the bin, staggered into the market. I don't think we're going to get much price movement. If you're looking at pricing the 2015 crop, I think with the rally we've had over the last month and a half, I think it's time to take maybe 20% of that. So just kind of watch the market. I like to just do hand to mouth on if you're buying feed for your cattle or for your hogs.
Okay, thank you. And much more as our roundtable continues. We'll take a look ahead at some of the trends we can possibly expect in 2015. But first, let's go to our friends in the shop. Here's Randy Taylor and Wayne Kiner.
Hi, welcome to Shop Stop. Today we want to talk about pump rating and how you can understand feet of head.
All right, so typically when you're trying to do a pump selection, it gives it in feet of head, and the reason they do that is they don't know what you're going to be using this pump for, so you use this feet of head, and we're going to kind of explain and try to simplify that a little bit.
Basically, when we talk about feet of head, it's really how far are you going to lift the water?
Right. So let's say that this pump located here, if it's pulling water from the floor to that pump and then up that pipe, it's from the floor to the top of that pipe is your feet of head.
That's how many feet are you moving it, and that's what it is.
But also, if we had our water level here and we had that pipe up, that's still our total feet of head, is those two pipes.
So that it hasn't changed at all. It's a matter of how far you're going to lift the water.
And then if you had your reservoir up here, that'd be that differential from your water level of your reservoir.
It's basically just boils down to it's a conversion into pressure. A lot of times when we look at pumps, we talk about PSI as our pounds per square inch for our pressure, but when we're actually elevating and lifting water, then we call it feet of head.
Yeah, and it's gallon per minute per feet of head is what typically the tables will show you.
So that's a little bit on pumps here on Shop Stop. We'll see you next week.
Finally, today, let's take a few minutes talking about some of the trends we can likely expect in the new year. Kim, let's start with you. What kind of things do you think we're going to see?
Well, I think corn and bean prices are probably going to stay relatively low. I think that's good for the cattle feeders with the feed prices. Wheat prices we're going to have to wait and see because we've got high world carryover stocks. If we have a short crop, then you could see $7, $7.50 wheat in Oklahoma. If we have a relatively large crop, you could see $5.50, $5.25 wheat. So there's a lot of variability on the market. It's going to depend how much product we produce this year when it comes to wheat. On canola, with the canola price so low, that canola price is going to have to come up at least above $7.50, probably up around $8 for us to have canola planted for the 2015 crop.
And I know those producers want those higher prices, without question. Every time I see them, they talk about it.
We want those higher prices for those producers too.
Okay, Jody, on your end, you and the team are going to continue the educational effort regarding the Farm Bill programs.
Yes, definitely. Starting with the new year, we'll have many more meetings across the state. We'll be doing lots of meetings with mobile computer labs, so we'll ask producers to come in and bring some information, and we can help them work through some of the decision tools to kind of help them understand the more complicated programs that are in this Farm Bill. So definitely the first few months of the year up until the March 31st sign-up deadline for the ARC and PLC programs, it'll be a pretty busy time.
What kind of things do they need to do in the meantime, even before they come to the meetings?
Really just kind of read up on the programs, get familiar with how the programs work, that, you know, one's based on only a price loss, one's based on a price and a yield loss, and just kind of get a little bit more familiar with where the prices are expected to go. So maybe watch Kim's forecast and get an idea of what's going to happen. But of course, these are marketing year average prices, and they don't just depend on what's going on in the U.S. So it's a little bit difficult to try to figure out where they're going to be for the next 4 years of the Farm Bill.
And it takes some time to really decide and kind of finalize what you're going to go with, doesn't it?
And you know, it really does. And this year, more than any year, they really need to just take some time and read on the programs. Read on the OSU website, the OSU Ag Policy website, the Oklahoma FSA website, because what they'll find is when they go into their Farm Service Agency office this year to sign up, that they won't get quite as much help as maybe they've gotten in the past, and they're going to be required to come up with a decision. Whichever one they decide to choose, they're going to need to tell their Farm Service Agency which one, and not just ask which one they should enroll in.
Okay, Derrell, what do you think we're going to see in terms of livestock markets and prices in 2015?
You know, we achieved these record high prices at the end of 2014. Those are going to carry through 2015. Again, my expectation is that for an annual average, prices across the board will be higher. Part of that's just due to the fact that they rose a lot in 2014. We won't see as much increase in 2015, but we'll see higher prices on average, and we'll probably at least seasonally push the peaks higher at times during the year. We probably started cow herd expansion in 2014. We don't quite have the final data to confirm that yet, but it'll continue in 2015. So we'll begin to see a slight increase in the cow herd, but beef production is going to continue to fall for 2015 through 2016, at least until late 2016 or into 2017 before any increase in beef production. So these high prices are going to continue. There'll be some seasonal variation in that, but in general, producers have an opportunity here to really take advantage of these markets.
And of course, it's translating right to consumers, and it has been for a while.
That's exactly right. That process will continue, and the demand question that's been there for a couple of years will be even more important in 2015 as we push these prices even higher in terms of both domestic demand and international demand, both of which were very strong, somewhat surprisingly strong in 2014, and so we'll be watching those closely to see that they maintain that strength in 2015.
I want to get a final thought from each of you as we close out today. Certainly appreciate your perspective and advice for our viewers. Kim, just a kind of final thought as we're wrapping up.
We can talk about prices all day long, but where they're going to make a profit is managing their cost and managing their money that they're made.
Jody?
I would kind of go along with Kim's comment, and they really need to just figure out what is covered and what's not covered under crop insurance, under commodity programs, under prices received for the commodities and what they're going to pay for them. They really just need to think about all that and decide which one makes the most sense for their operation.
For cattle, again, high prices, we've got lots of opportunity now, but we really need to be thinking out the next several years in terms of how to take advantage of that and make plans ahead. At some point in time, we will put some pressure on this market. It's a ways down the road, but you need to think through that process.
Okay, on that note, I think we should toast to a happy and prosperous new year for you and all of our SUNUP viewers. Thank you all very much. And that will do it for us today. Remember, you can find us anytime at sunup.okstate.edu and also follow us on YouTube and social media. I'm Lyndall Stout. We'll see you next time at SUNUP.